Namaste to all. Welcome to the discussion on the creation of the universe. Purusha Sukta Demystified by Indic Researchers Forum. I am Satya Pulkuri, your host for the session. I am currently Associate Editor for the forum. Indic Researchers Forum is an independent, non-profit research organization aimed at bringing out quality research on geopolitics, national security, culture, history, and social sciences through an Indic civilizational perspective. The idea is to promote research and propagate the notion that the country has a civilizational heritage that is much larger and older than its recent history. The organization strives at bringing best minds who has a strong inclination towards quality research and are enthusiastic for contributing towards the cause of nation building. At the same time, expressing intellectual aspirations of the Indic civilization. Today, I have the honor to introduce Sri Nilesh Ji and Sri Parag Balerao Ji. Sri Nilesh Ji's contribution to Indic studies is well known. He helps individuals become aware of the deep wisdom and antiquity of the Indian civilization so that they truly comprehend, present, or defend the grand narrative of their civilization. Unlike most other Indic researchers, because he builds it through scientific and logical reasoning. We welcome you, sir. And to the discussion with him, I have the honor to introduce Sri Parag Balerao, who is the author of the book Creation of the Universe, Purusha Sukta Demystified. I welcome both of you and hand over the proceedings to Nilesh ji. Over to you, sir. Thank you. Sir, you're on mute.
I'll I'll restart again. Namaskar, everyone, and thank you for joining this session, conversation, open discussion. We will have some time for question and answers at the end on Purusha Sukta, and our main main researcher, the key researcher here is Parag Bhalerao. He has written a book on Purusha Sukta, interpreting the mantras of Purusha Sukta, giving a perspective, a specific perspective. And all we look forward to is having a light chat with him, and through that, get some insights of his work, but also know more about Purusha Sukta. He's a professional management professional with bachelor's, master's, MBA. Uh, he lives and works in America, originally from Pune. And through his through this discussion, you will get to know more about him too. And so, Parag, welcome to the discussion. Thank you for joining this, and we will have. I'll give you time to say a few words, and then we will get into the subject matter.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning and good evening. I know we have people from different parts of the world. So depending on your time zone, and welcome everybody. Nilesh ji, thank you. It is honestly a true privilege and honor for me to share this virtual stage with Nilesh ji. Nilesh ji, I have a lot of respect towards you. I have studied a lot of research that you have done, and it's absolutely mind-blowing. And I'm really privileged that you are here with us today.
All right, so let's get into the discussion. Now, when I was growing up, my father taught me how to recite Purusha Sukta. Over time, I might have added my errors into it, how I pronounce it, and so on, because I'm not always following the text, because just reciting from a memory. But for a long time, I did not know the context of it. Okay, so my first question to you, and that can help us, help all of our listeners and ourselves, the context. What is Purusha Sukta? What different place or a specific place where it appears, and the context of it?
Okay, fantastic. Great start for the topic. So Purusha Sukta is basically a hymn. Hymn or Sukta is collection of mantras in Vedic literature. This is the only Sukta that appears in all four Veds. It's there in all four Veds, and most of the rituals that we do, may it be Satyanarayan Puja, may it be Ganapati Pratisthapana, or any puja that follows Shodashopachar Vidhi, most of those pujas are based on Purusha Sukta, or Purusha Sukta is recited through that puja or during that puja in parts. So we chant one mantra from Purusha Sukta, do some rituals, then move forward, and so on. So since it is there in every Sukta, every Ved, and it is used in most common or most major pujas, it is probably the most important hymn. That is what I interpreted. And also, as I was trying to understand what exactly Purusha Sukta is all about, every individual, may it be spiritual leader, may it be modern leaders, whatever, they all agree that Purusha Sukta describes creation of the universe. So with that context, I became more interested in studying and understanding this Sukta and got into more details and studied it further.
Okay. No, that's good. And I would imagine the fact you mentioned the Purusha Sukta is there in all four Vedas, but also the fact that it gets used even in a typical puja, like Shodashopchar puja, or the individuals who do puja every day may not know it, but if you invite the person to assist you in a puja, the one who is expert, like a Pandit, you can say, and so he knows it, she knows it, they will use it. So is it fair to say that many people have, many other individuals, researchers have also written on Purusha Sukta? Is that the case?
Yes, Nilesh. So there are extensive commentaries available on Purusha Sukta, and you can pretty much, if you take any leading spiritual or religious organization, some swamis or sadhus or leaders in that organization, we will find they have either published books or they have YouTube videos or some writings on their websites about Purusha Sukta. There is a lot of literature available on Purusha Sukta.
Okay, great. And so recently you have written a book. In fact, that is the context. In some sense, that is a context or something for us to hang on to. We are having this conversation today in the context of your book also, although the subject is Purusha Sukta. So my next point related to that is, of course, that there are multiple people who have written on Purusha Sukta, just like there are multiple people who have commented on the Bhagavad Gita. So everyone tries to see it from their point of view. There could be many motivations for writing this. Again, say Bhagavad Gita or Purusha Sukta. It will be interesting if you, depending on the time, we can decide if you have a time to get into some of the other famous commentaries on Purusha Sukta. But I'll start just in a limited fashion for you. The fact that it exists is there in the all Vedas. People use it during the Shodashopchar Puja. What was your motivation to write on Purusha Sukta?
Okay. So basically, since childhood, I was very curious to understand what is the real meaning, why do we do certain things. And somehow, right from the beginning, I had a belief that all the rituals that we do, all the scriptures that we follow, those are very scientific and very practical. Though over ages, over period of thousands of years, some of the significance is lost, and a lot of times we follow it mechanically. In my heart, I always believed that there is some practical and scientific meaning behind it. And I always was trying to uncover in my own little way what the scientific and practical aspect could be. And when I came across Purusha Sukta, when I realized that it describes creation of universe, I was very curious that, okay, how does it describe it? In modern science, there are a lot of theories like, theory of expanding universe, theory of Big Bang theory, and so on and so forth. So I was very curious that modern science states something, and these scriptures are written thousands of years ago. How do they relate to each other? Is there any commonality? Or as a traditional belief, these scriptures are just somebody wrote thousands of years ago and they have no practical or scientific meaning? What is the truth? So with that curiosity, I started studying. And the most important thing, Nilesh, as I said, there are a lot of books available, a lot of YouTube videos available, so on and so forth. But when I studied those, I realized that their interpretation was more spiritual than scientific.
Hmm.
In their description, they could not very clearly state that how this sukta or specific mantras in this sukta talk about creation of universe.
Hmm.
So when I did my research or my study, my analysis, I kept that context in mind, that no, whatever I'm going to write, whatever I'm going to uncover, I'm going to keep the context of creation of universe. And in that context, I'm going to interpret and find all the details. So in a way, the differentiator between my book and most of the literature that is available is also same, that it is scientific analysis with the context of creation.
Very good. So before we get into possibly some contrast that, certain, a group of people might approach the Purusha Sukta, you said from a spiritual point of view, adhyatmic point of view, versus you are doing it from a scientific point of view. And I'll ask the question about that too, which is to say, as you see it, what's the difference between a spiritual versus scientific point of view? But before even that, if you can give not so much interpretation, but just in understanding the very basics of it, where you said it's in 4 Vedas, but at least maybe reference to one Veda, where it appears, how many suktas, how many ruchas, not sukta, that is a sukta, so how many ruchas. And even I make a mistake there, ruk versus rucha, which one is a plural, and it's always like a confusion in my mind. And give maybe not so much whether a scientific or spiritual, but a high level summary of the content of Purusha Sukta. So where it appears and a high level content of a Purusha Sukta. That can be a good beginning for us.
Okay. So Purusha Sukta, as I said, multiple Veds or all Veds. In Rigveda, it is in 10th mandal. And number of ruchas slightly differ in different Veds. There are minor variations, even though the overall context and the majority part is same. But there are some variations. There are 16 main richas or main mantras, followed by Falashruti. But looking at the core of it, looking at the gist of it, the actual mantras are 16 in Purusha Sukta. And again, as you rightly said, it is used in spiritual rituals. It is recited on daily basis by so many people, right? And you yourself mentioned that you daily chant Purusha Sukta, and there are thousands of families and people. So it definitely has strong spiritual foundation. And in my research, I no way intended or meant to put down the spiritual aspect of it. But my intent was to uncover scientific aspect in addition to the spiritual beliefs that people have.
Okay. So before even people kind of make their mind whether you have tried to put down a specific aspect, whether spiritual aspect, or try to put up the scientific aspect, maybe this is good timing to put that to rest, at least as you say it. How would you, for a ordinary individual, all of us, that includes all of us who are listening to you, differentiate between how the scientific aspect or scientific way of looking at something versus a spiritual way of looking at something? What are the differences? And maybe even I'll add, if you see if there are any commonalities, what are the commonalities and differences between these two approaches?
Okay, great. A very interesting question. Commonality is the context. Everybody believes and agrees that it describes creation of the universe. But if you look at the interpretations, when you look at religious or spiritual, people focus on when you, and we'll get into some of the mantras as we move forward, but they imagine that there is a God who created the universe, which is again commonality, no dispute there. But then what happens is, for relatability, for most common people, somebody tries to impersonate that. Somebody tries to paint a picture of that God with some of the descriptions or attributes or qualities that are described in Purusha Sukta. Right? So Purusha Sukta starts with saying a Purusha with thousands of heads, thousands of eyes, thousands of legs. So an artist comes forward, draws a beautiful picture of a god and or a human kind of a figure who has thousands of heads and so on and so forth. And then at that point, their focus changes from understanding the scientific aspect to purely worshipping that figure which somebody has drawn or somebody has imagined. Again, there's nothing wrong with that, because spiritual growth is equally important. And at some point, spiritual and scientific roads meet together is my belief. But the interpretation of keeping God at the center and assuming that God is everything and analyzing everything in that perspective, versus keeping the context of creation of universe where there was nothing, and from there how the universe came about. So those perspectives are different, or it is different way of looking at same thing.
Okay, yeah, no, good one. And so when you are saying a context of a particular devata or a god in the sense of a Ishta devata, or just trying to visualize that Purusha Sukta referring to that devata, that's what you're calling as a spiritual. Versus looking at, if we can use the word from a secular perspective, not the secular way they used in the politics and they have made a mess out of it, but not whether astik, nastik, just get rid of that. Just looking purely at the content of Purusha Sukta as you may perceive, one may perceive, and what is it telling you. That's possibly the scientific view. Is that fair? Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
So let's get into that scientific view. We have 16 mantras. Maybe, the idea is that not to go through all the 16 mantras. That won't be possible. And possibly people go to original Rigveda, read the Purusha Sukta, look at multiple translations, then they come to your book to see the possible contrast. How about we start with the first mantra of the Purusha Sukta, and then afterwards jump to the last one. I'm not saying necessarily last one is a concluding, or can you hear me? Okay, last one is a concluding or of that fashion, and give us the perspective. Now, some of the people who may already know it, like I chant it and I've done it, but also those who may not know it at all. Maybe this is their first introduction to Purusha Sukta too, but you have to find the fine balance between that. So just tell us, what is it telling? Maybe how from a spiritual point of view, how a person looks at it, and how you look at that first mantra.
Okay, great. So I'll just take one quick minute before I go to first mantra and set some context or give some background. And I'm not going to read through all the slides, but a couple of important points I want to mention. And one of the reasons I want to highlight those points is sometimes we get questioned or challenged or criticized based on some of the descriptions or some of the aspects. So I will touch upon those aspects as well as we move forward. Now, when we are studying Vedic literature, when we talk about Ved, common question comes: when were Veds written? Who wrote Veds? And things like that, right? So when were those Veds written? There are a lot of different analysis available. Nilesh is expert. He has done scientific dating of so many books or scriptures. But for Vedic literature, it goes back 24,000 BCE. That is the youngest date, and there are dates that go even beyond that. The other important thing is Veds are said to be apaurushaya, meaning they are not written by anybody. So again, that becomes a point of criticism that, okay, if those are not written by anybody, what your God wrote it and gave it to you, or different people ask some weird questions. So that is not the case. There are two aspects of these Veds being Apaurushaya. The first aspect is when these Veds were written by different rishis. By the way, all the Veds or any given Ved is not entirely written by one rishi. There are different rishis who contributed different sections or different suktas or different mantras forming given Ved. So anyway, so these rishis say that I am not the originator. I'm not the intellect or intelligence behind this. When I was in, let's say, Samadhi state, I heard this. So that Parmeshwar, Paramatma, Supreme Consciousness, whatever word we use, he revealed those mantras to me or through me. So I'm just an instrument. So they did not take any credit for that. And that's why they say it's not created by me. And everybody says that it's not created by me. So it's not created by anybody. So it is Apaurushaya. So in that context, it is Apaurushaya. And also the second aspect is most of the rishis, they did not take any credit for composing those richas or mantras. And they did not author those. There are so many suktas where the rishi has not mentioned his or her name. Right? Of course, Purusha Sukta, there is a name, it's Narayan Rishi. But for a lot of other sections, there are no authors or rishis mentioned. And that is again because they were humble, they did not take any credit. And that's why they proclaim that it is revealed to me or revealed through me. And that made it Apaurushaya. The other important word I will just explain here. We are talking about Purusha Sukta. So what is Purusha and what is Sukta? Sukta is very simple. We just mentioned that Sukta is collection of mantras or collection of richas forming in traditional way stotra or a poem or a hymn. It's collection of mantras basically that forms Sukta. But what is Purusha? Again, this sometimes becomes a point for criticism that your scriptures are male dominated. They are talking only about Purusha, not about Stri or male and not female, and men and not women, and so on and so forth. But if we understand the word Purusha, it has nothing to do with gender. It has nothing to do with human. It has nothing to do with any living being or any creation at all. What does Purusha mean? It consists of two words, Pura and Usha, or Pura and Sha. Now, most interpretation, Nilesh, if you read any book about Purusha Sukta that explains the word Purusha, they always split that word as Puri Shete or Puri Shayanat. Pura is used in different way in different contexts. Bhagavad Gita calls human body as Pura. Right, in typical context, a town or a village is called Pura, right? So in this context, Pura is entire creation, entire universe, and that there is again no conflict there. But then second part, Sha. Now, if you all know, in Sanskrit language and most of the other Indian languages, there are two sounds, two alphabets that sound similar. One is Sha and one is Sha. And if you see here, I have written those in red color explicitly. So when you say Puri Shayanat, it means the one who sleeps in entire universe. Shaya or Shayan indicates sleep, right? So the one who sleeps in entire universe. Now, if you say he's sleeping in the entire universe, he won't be active. When we are sleeping, we are not active. We are not contributing. We are not achieving any productive things during our sleep. And also the Sha used in Shayana and Sha used in Purusha are different Shas. And a lot of people have made a confusion there and they have interpreted as Puri Shete or Puri Shayana. In my humble opinion, that's not the right way to look at that word. The right way to look at it is using right Sha. If you use right Sha, then we can split the word Purusha as Pura Ushayati. Usha here is the same word as Usha that we use to refer to early part of the day, early morning or dawn, whatever word you use. So that is the time when sun rises, earth starts receiving more energy, everybody wakes up, everybody becomes active. So that time we receive energy and we become active. So in the similar meaning, this Pura Ushayati is the energy. Again, you can call it as Parmeshwar, Paramatma, whatever. The one who energizes entire universe
Mhm.
is Purusha. And again, it is form of Shakti, form of energy in the simpler words. And that is why it doesn't have any gender or any human or any other form. It's a formless energy that created and that sustains the universe. So that is Purusha. And of course, Sukta we talked about. Any questions before I jump into first mantra?
No, no questions. That is all good. If you can go, yeah, after you go through the first mantra, I want to get into, in a limited time we have, get into specific aspects where you can contrast it with possibly how others have interpreted. So really want to see what is your contribution in terms of additional insights to Purusha
Okay.
Sukta. Okay, so yeah, finish
Okay.
this, and then I want to go into those specific mantra of your choice where you can
Okay.
truly bring that contrast.
Okay, great. And in fact, you will see that contrast in the very first mantra itself.
Okay.
So let's go there.
Very good.
Again, I'm going to say the mantra. I'm purposely not saying I'm going to chant. I'm going to say the mantra for
Yeah.
understanding the words. So I'm not going to follow the intonation or swaras, just for the sake of this discussion. So the first mantra, it starts how the whole creation began, how it came about, how it started. And in very short time, we'll see how it relates to one of the most popular theories of creation of universe.
Mhm.
Okay. The most popular theory of creation of universe in modern science is Big Bang theory. Big Bang theory says, I won't go into details, but there was an explosion, and through that explosion, all the galaxies and the entire universe came into existence. That's a very simple idea behind uh, Big Bang theory. Now, if we look at this mantra tells exactly the same thing. How? This mantra says, the first line says, Sahastra Shirsha Purushaha Sahasraksha Sahasrapat. Okay, we'll just see first line. So it says this Purusha has thousands of heads. Shirsha is head. He has thousands of eyes and thousands of legs. Now, if you look at any spiritual description or any book for that matter, you will see people immediately draw a picture. They draw a picture of a human figure with thousands of heads, thousands of eyes and hands and so on. But when I was looking at it, I questioned myself, why are they talking only about head, eyes and legs? Why not hands? Why not mouth? Why not nose? Why not ears? Why not tummy? So on and so forth. Why only these three parts: head, eyes, and legs? And then I realized that this mantra is explaining the condition right at that Big Bang. If you look at Big Bang as a just for a simple visualization, if you look at a firecracker, when the firecracker bursts, what happens? Thousands of sparks come out of that firecracker and they start going all over. Right now, that similar situation, if somebody has to see that explosion, similar situation they would have seen, similar picture they would have seen, a big explosion and thousands of sparks coming out. That is what is described in first line. When they say Sahasra Shirsha, Shirsha does not mean conventional head as a part of the body. Shirsha word is used to indicate individuality or uniqueness. Like even in today's context, we use words like per head. That means per individual, and that individual is unique individual, separate from rest of the individuals. So it indicates individuality or uniqueness. Then Aksha is eye. Eye is used to indicate luster or shine or spark. Right? We see there was spark in his eye. Right? So that spark or shine, that is indicated through eye, and legs, pad, is indication of motion or movement. So what this first line says is, as a result of that explosion, thousands of individual distinct objects got created. They were shining. They had a lot of energy and they're shining, lot of luster, and they started moving. They were in motion. That is what this first line indicates, which is exactly what modern theories say. Now, sometimes, Nilesh, what happens is any Sanskrit word might have multiple meanings, right? There are words that I found even there are like 20 plus meanings, same word. So typically people, when they do translation, they use most conventional word, most conventional meaning. Whereas I try to interpret it again in the keeping that context in mind. The context is creation. How will this word or which meaning of this word maps into creation context? And then I use the right meaning and did my analysis. Right? Then it says this Purusha, he created this universe as a part of that explosion, and that Purusha, that energy, that Shakti, Sabhumim Vishwato Vrutva Atyatishta Dashangulam. So it covers the entire creation, it covers the entire world or entire universe, and it extends beyond that known universe, the universe that we know of, that we can analyze, understand. The Purusha itself extends far beyond that. Now, one important thing is it says Dashangulam. So it says extends beyond the universe by 10 inches or 10 angular, 10 finger, whatever you want to go interpret it. Now, somebody asked me this question, how do they know it was 10 inches? Who went to measure it? Right? And the meaning of 10 here is not traditional 10 that we use today. The significance here is this words, the numbers 10, 100, 1,000, whatever, these are all Ganit. Right? Whereas the Purusha is Aganit, is infinite. In our mathematical system, in decimal system, there are digits from 0 to 9. That's all. Whatever cannot be expressed within those digits is infinite. So that is what that 10 indicates here in that context, infinite or something that cannot be measured, something that cannot be expressed with the mathematical symbols that we have. So it is infinite, basically.
Okay. So now you connected this verse with the modern scientific theory of a Big Bang and the expansionary universe, or just a Big Bang. What would have been your position, or let's say, what could an individual do, even a person intending to connect this, say, in a scientific fashion, let's say more than 600 years ago, when the Big Bang did not exist? So is it like you're saying it's a scientific, you looked at it scientific in a scientific fashion, but is it because now we have a Big Bang, therefore you try to connect in your mind the two? Or somebody 600 years also looked at this and said, hey, this is something beyond chanting, beyond reciting or chanting. Again, you don't know that, but that's what I'm trying to understand, from.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, it is my belief that whenever these mantras, richas, or any part of the scripture was written, it was written with that scientific aspect in mind. Over thousands of years, what happened is the rituals continued, the practices continued, but the meaning got lost. Or the different meanings got attached to it. Again, some meanings are good, relevant, important, all that is not denying, but the true scientific original meaning got lost over ages. I mean, if you look at it, you have done so much dating of various texts, right? Here, if we are saying it is 25,000 years old, 26,000 years old, imagine how old the text is and how many revisions and potentially dilutions also it might have gone through, right? And during that process, somewhere we dropped the real meaning and we continued that as a practice. Especially when we talk about Bhakti Marga, that is what happens in Bhakti Marga.
Right. But even in the scientific Marga, I mean, again, we may or may not have a time for this, which is to say, we may connect this with something else, like say Big Bang, which is great. But whether Big Bang existed or not, so now we have that theory. how do we validate that this is meant by that? That's a question. Again, not a question to you per se. That is a question that we are all challenged with. Like, how do I take this meaning and say, oh, this perfectly matches? So for example, you said, oh, this perfectly matches what is been said by Big Bang. Of course, many people don't know Big Bang, and I don't want you to go there today. It's a homework for them. But that is something of a challenge, which is to say, you at a subjective level may be convinced about it, that this perfectly explains Big Bang. But how do you say Swarthanuman, like you are convinced, which is great, but how do you turn that into Pararthanuman, like make others understand in a methodical fashion? But just moving from the subject, just to keeping the limitations of time in mind, this Purusha Sukta also has other Ruk mantra, which the Western Indologist, but also either their lack is in India, so that's like the last 200 years, like totally been wowed and impressed by the tie and a suit. Some people have been saying, oh, well, they say this, so it must be true. If a white man says it, it must be true, kind of thing. That syndrome. But also even within Indian tradition is known to be critical. It's meant to be critical. Sanatana, Nitya Nutana. We continuously look at the same thing and try to say, did I get it right? Trying to purify, Kshina dosha, the elimination and minimization of error. But there are some mantra in Purusha Sukta, which of course for their own beneficial reason, breaking India reason, whatever, they have made controversial. One is related to the Varna system, and then the whole Purusha, right? For example, and there may be others. And I would like to ask you if you can take something like this, for example, talk about what might be the intended meaning of Purusha Sukta, how it is wrongly interpreted, and what could be or what ought to be the right interpretation, such as say number 13.
Great. No, I'm glad you asked that question, Nileshji. So there are, mantras which, if you do literal translation without right context, they talk about Pashubali, right? So sacrificing animals in Yajna and things of that nature, which again, without context, if we try to interpret, they lead to some misunderstanding. And this is one of the mantra which I have on the screen, which talks about Varna Vyavastha. The sad part about Varna Vyavastha is it was created or defined for different purpose. It got converted into completely different thing and became a mess. And a lot of people, for their interests, have capitalized on that and, with their selfish motives, and created barriers in the society. So there are two aspects to Varna Vyavastha in this general context. One is real division of the society or categorization of the people in society. It's not meant for dividing people, but just categorizing them. But if you look at Purusha Sukta, the Purusha Sukta is written, or it is describing that whole creation, and the human race is just being created. So there is no possibility or no aspect of immediately categorizing them and creating barriers and groups and boundaries. What it really indicates is, again, we have very little time, so I'll just jump through few things. But it says, from that Purusha's mouth, Brahmans came. From his arms, Kshatriya came. From his thighs, Vaishya came. And from his feet, Shudra came. Now, first and important thing is, it is just a sequence of describing those four categories. It is not hierarchy. Nowhere in any scripture it is ever said that Brahmins are most important, then next are Kshatriya, and Shudras are not important or least important. It is all misinterpretation or intentional misinterpretation for some selfish motive, right? What here it is saying, in my opinion, these four aspects indicate some functionality which is essential for survival of every living being. Head or mouth indicates jnana or knowledge. So for our survival, or even if you take unicellular organisms like amoeba, they need to have some knowledge of their surrounding, or how to survive, what to do, how to protect, how to reproduce, so on and so forth, right? So that knowledge is indicated by Brahman aspect of human being. So basically, this creator, this Purusha, gave ability to acquire knowledge to everybody. Then arms indicate self-defense, or Kshatriya in general, or Rajanya is same as Kshatriya. It indicates defense. So it also gave ability to everybody to defend or protect themselves, at least at an individual level. Then it became into family level, society level, so on and so forth. But an ability for every living being to protect itself from different kinds of attacks is indicated by Rajanya or Kshatriya quality. Everybody needs to have ability to acquire something, acquire and store something, which is Vaishya quality. And even if in simple example, when we eat food, we store that food at least for a few hours, right? So there are some exceptions like me who keep eating constant, non-stop. But the real aspect is you eat once or you eat twice, whatever, and you store that energy to survive or carry on your functions for rest of the day. So that ability of retaining, acquiring, storing things, and food is just an example, but any aspect is indicated by Vaishya quality. And then all other activities, the moving from here to there, doing different work, doing different things, all those aspects are indicated by Shudra qualities or Shudra aspect. Now, these four aspects exist in every single living being, including trees and plants, even if we see that they are not physically moving, right? Then as the society evolved, these four functions got associated with social responsibilities. And that created four categories. Again, those are not definitely race, definitely not jati. Jati's vyavastha is absolute mess. But anyway, and the other important thing that came, Nileshji, is there is a word Shudra and there is another word called Kshudra. Shudra means inferior, something that has no value, and things like that. And those two words kind of sound very similar, Shudra and Kshudra. And a lot of people then started misinterpreting that the word is not Shudra, it is Kshudra, and Kshudra means inferior, so Shudras are inferior, and all kinds of things like that. But I have in my book given a lot of references to Mahabharata, to Bhagavad Gita, and so on, where it clearly says that there is no difference between four varnas. Those are based on their activities, what they prefer to do, and so on and so forth.
Right. I mean, I would say a simple metaphor of a car can be equally useful. Like which one is more important, the tires or the steering wheel, or the doors or the horn, right? Or or lights or the headlights. They all have a purpose and they have to work together. In Upanishad, we get many stories, where they will go, like this, like in your human body, one time, like the stomach decides to stop working, the ears decide to stop working, and we get the stories like that.
Exactly.
Quickly, one thing I'll mention in just related to this, there is a one Akhyayika. I mean, that is how the knowledge is imparted in Upanishadic fashion. In Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and you would be familiar with it. I think it comes very first part like a fourth Brahmana. Brahmana as in like a chapter, 1.4. Where it says initially there was only Brahman, which is to say Brahman, not like today we will think in the Varna Vyavastha like what we think today. And it was all well. But then what happened is, then that principle, sort of that Brahman principle realized, it's like a knowledge. So to do any activity, you need knowledge. And then it realized that to protect it, but it could not protect itself. And so that Brahma think of equivalent with the Brahman, but now it said, hey, I need the things to protect. And those protection, that Rajan, that we have the word Rajan, these were all like Indra Raj and a Varuna Raj. I mean, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says Mrityu Raj and Yama Raj. I mean, these are all those Rajanya, like this. And so life was good. And then they realized when it comes to sustenance, when it comes to nourishment, these two are not serving the purpose. And then what we call Sangha, as a group, community, those, like, that's why we see Vyapari Mahasangha, right? So those came into being, and in the what you can say, the language or the metaphor of the Vedic thing, these were like, you have this Sangha of, say, 11 Rudras and 7 or 49 Marut, and Aditya, 12 Aditya. So those were the Vaishyas. So I think even, even as a metaphorical, when people realize that, they start saying this is not a hierarchy in the sense that we misunderstand today. And then the Shudra, that Shudra there is basically said to be Prithvi.
Yeah.
Okay, Prithvi. And so it is like giving, so that is the basis. I mean, that's the basis on which everything works, because all the other top I'm saying in the way today we understand or like to think as a hierarchy, which is not the case, are sustained, are supported, and exist because of a Prithvi.
Exactly.
So it may, our audience here, it may help them to also look at what Parag has done, beautiful narration on Purusha Sukta, but try to see this is not one instance of it describing it, and when you try to bring it from multiple sources, it actually creates a better understanding of it. With our time, I want to ask you sort of a last question. This is not going to be the last question. Hopefully we'll open up for question answers, and we can have questions from the audience. If so, besides people reading your book, besides people going to the original and reading the Purusha Sukta and possibly looking at multiple translations to enhance, encourage, enrich their knowledge, what if you have to give say 2 takeaways for people, our listeners here, but our listeners who would be listening to it afterwards, like, what is it that you would encourage them, you would request them to do? What would be those 1, 2, or 3 things that you truly want them to do if they truly want to get into the spirit and comprehension and understanding of Purusha Sukta?
Very good, very good. So the whole reason why I started looking into and writing a book is I was hearing questions. Oh, in your religion, this is what they're. Oh, how stupid is that? In your religion, that is there. How stupid is that? And even growing in US, my own kids were asking me some questions which in the beginning I could not answer. Right? I believed that there is a significance, but I did not know what it is. Right? So that is how that whole thing started. So my request, or I want to urge everybody that understand that our scriptures are very, very practical, and to keep an open mind, and then do some study, do some research, find out some references, what those things really mean. Why do we do puja? Why do we lamp light? Why, when we say Vishnu, typical appearance of Vishnu is he is in the ocean sleeping on the snake. And if you look at any religious book, they have first somebody picturized it, and now people are doing interpretation of that picture rather than the real description. So what that real description is, what that whole thing means, how it is applied. Or if you look at scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita is nothing but guide to your day-to-day life. How you live a better life, how do you live a peaceful life, how do you achieve your goals, how do you set examples for others. So tremendous amount of practical information is available. So my urge, my request is to take interest, believe that there is something beyond literal translation, and make an attempt, make an effort to learn that, understand, and uncover that.
Okay, great. We have about 10 minutes to ask questions. So I open up the forum to everyone on this call. Please keep your questions very crisp and succinct so that we can cover as many questions as we can in the limited time we have. So I would ask organizers to kind of manage it. I'm not very familiar with this Google Meet. So if they can raise a hand. So Satya, if you want to take a lead and how we manage that questions.
All right, sir. I can just take up the question for you in the chat box.
Sure.
Okay. The first question is, what is your take on relating this mantra to fusion of simple atoms to more complex ones after the Big Bang theory?
So honestly, I did come across that stream of thoughts, but I have not explored enough to answer that question yet. Maybe at some point when I finish my study on that line, I will be able to answer.
All right, sir. I have another question which I'm personally having. When we were told about that we have a session related to the Purusha Sukta, I did a bit of like a literature review and I was just digging up. And there was a particular blog article where it was saying the power generator from Purusha Sukta and how it can, generate electricity impulses. And it was just basically talking about the protons and the scientific behind it. So, have you touched upon this topic in your book, or like recently, like after you were doing the research on Purusha Sukta while you were writing, have you ever experienced it in a personal basis?
Yes and no. So I think you are referring to Venkataramananji's blog, Ramani's
Yes.
blog, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that they have discussed and explained that aspect. Now, if you look at it, or if you're asking me specifically, have I built a battery based on Purusha Sukta description and generated energy? The answer is no. But have I experienced energy or rise in energy within myself when I properly chant Purusha Sukta? Answer is absolutely yes.
All right, sir. The next question will be from my side only again, and I just have some questions for you. Will you be continuing the series like you started with Purusha Sukta? So will you be going deeper into more such culturally rich literature and texts which have a lot of scientific interpretations? Like we have seen the aeroplanes and everything, which has Indian origin. Like if you actually are aware about the Indic studies, the common people, there's a lot of reference given about the modern technology. So how would you like continue this whole series? Like what is your next coming project, or like what are your plans for Indic studies and civilization?
Okay, great. So specifically talking about aeroplanes, there is a girl who is aeronautics engineer, and she has actually done research and built up a prototype. So I don't intend to repeat what she has done, and that is her domain. So specifically about aeroplanes, no. But I'm still exploring different, I would say, misinterpretations and confusions, and how I can address those. So that is the next topic. And parallelly, I have started writing on Bhagavad Gita on very practical level. Like you take a self-help book, you take books like How to Win Friends, Influence People, how you take books like Power of Focus, you take, so many authors are there, Western authors, American authors. They have given some descriptions, and I'm writing a book on Bhagavad Gita, that you take any challenge in life, how practical answers in Bhagavad Gita about those challenges or those aspects of life. So that is my current project I'm working on.
All right, sir. We have a question from Harsh Patil. What is the difference between Ms. Prasanna? You can just drop your question in the chat box. I'll be taking it. Okay. The question is, what is the difference between Parabrahma and Brahma? And what is the difference between Brahmacharya and celibacy?
Okay, good question. So these are again different words that we have used for some same or similar concept. Okay, so you can call it Brahma, you can call it Parabrahma, you can call it Paramatma, you can call it Supreme Lord, you can call it Shiva, you can call it Vishnu. It all means same. Okay, of course, Atma and Paramatma, there is a little difference, but Brahma and Parabrahma and Paramatma, all those things indicate that supreme energy, that supreme power that created the universe, that maintains, nourishes the universe, and eventually it inhalates the universe, or different functions within the universe.
All right, so our next question is, have you come across any texts that discusses formation of Earth and Moon, or say the grahas of our Saurya Mandal? From Dipankar Pathak.
Right. So yes, there are books and there are descriptions. If you look at Purusha Sukta, it talks about first general creation, then it talks about our solar system, our galaxy, and then it jumps into more focuses on Earth. So the intermediate details are not very explicitly given in Purusha Sukta. Of course, there are different texts in Rigved that talk about creation, and different texts have different levels of details. But in Purusha Sukta, it is not there.
All right, sir. We have like last two questions. One question is the whole purpose of this book and the whole Indic studies is just to promote the ancient civilizational literature and heritage which has been preserved, and we are trying to bring it up into the limelight. So thereby we might often like a great criticism that it's promoting a particular religion. How do you like make it clear that it is not promoting a particular religion, however civilization, a particular culture and a literature which can apply to any religion? Let's say even atheist will be able to like get benefited by reading, by just getting the perspective what is written in the Purusha Sukta, and thereby they can come up with a criticism. That's a different thing. I mean, just by getting the awareness and having a new perspective, like how would you deal with all this?
Right. So if I say Earth is round, does it have anything to do with any religion, any race, community?
No, sir.
No, right? If I say sun rises in the morning and sets in the evening, has it anything to do with any religion? If I say our solar system has sun in the center and X number of planets, there are differences, but what are 7 or 9 planets? Does it have anything to do with any religion? No. So same way, the way my interpretation in this book at least is not related to any religious aspects. Again, when I say that, I want to make it very clear that yes, that some of these scriptures are predominantly followed in Sanatan Dharma, and absolutely I have a lot of respect. There are a lot of spiritual benefits, but as far as these interpretations that I have given, they are not directly related or not influencing a specific belief system.
Thank you, sir. And we actually have a question for Nilesh, sir. Sir, you here with us?
Oh, I forgot to answer that. That question was there previously by Harsh. Okay, Nilesh, you can take that. I can take that. Whatever.
Okay, what is the question?
It is actually answered by Parag, sir. However, he's Mr. Harsh Patel is looking for your take on it. The question is, what is the difference between Parabrahma and Brahma, and what is the difference between Brahmacharya and Celibacy?
The first question Parag already answered, and I agree with that. And I mean, completely agree with that. But even if I didn't agree, how does that matter? But that was a great answer, and that is exactly what it is. We should never get stuck in the words. And the second question, Brahmacharya versus celibacy, great question again, Harsh, who you asked. I will not answer it, but I want to convey an important point there. So today, for example, we are talking about Purusha Sukta, and specifically Parag Bhalera's book and his interpretation, and trying to bring insights in his own way. So that is a subject, and we went through that. It's very important as a etiquette, so Harsh, this is a comment to Harsh, but this is not personally to Harsh. This is a comment in general. It's very important, and we have to all learn it as a civilizational importance, of civilizational importance, that we keep the area kind of focused what we ask. So if Purusha Sukta is about the creation, somebody asking about the earth, is there any reference to earth and formation of earth and moon, is a relevant question. Suddenly, a Brahmacharya and celibacy is not a relevant question. By the way, I have answered that questions in many of my talks, but it's it's always a dilemma. Like somebody has asked a great question. So Harsh, your question is great. Actually, it's a phenomenal question. But me answering that is like taking the mood of today's lecture away. So I don't want to answer that question here.
All right, so one last question for both of you. Both of you can answer this. Basically, yeah, while we are going to the particular text, many people often interpret it as a literal meaning. Like, let's take an illustration. Let's take an example where we have been told there are 33 koti devatas. So many people who are like non from this background, like let's say in our religion only, let's say in other religion, let's say other people, they often say that how did anyone count that there were 33 crore people? So maybe because of the colonization, they literally meant koti as a crore. However, like if we go deeper into this, Koti means supreme. Like the 33 Koti means 12 Adityas, 11 Rudras, 8 Vasus, and 2 Ashwins. So this is the example I'm giving. So this is how we defend it. Like we trying to explain to a particular layman or a person, but we can't just since we all are engaged and we all are preoccupied with our own work. How do you like have a general awareness and general idea of the information about the culture and the literature we have in Indic civilization? Like how do you like promote it to the layman so that he'll understand with a proper logic and reasoning?
Okay, Parag, you want to go first? You want me to go first? You are on the mute, Parag.
You can go ahead.
Okay. So lot of questions there. First thing, that 13 crore, 13 koti that turn into crore, and yes, there is a good explanation for how that adds up to 33 and not 33 crore. That's one. But I would also like to ask, so what if there are truly 33 crore devatas? So what? Like in our body, we have so many cells, so I mean, we are full of bacteria here, good and bad bacteria. Usually many good bacteria than a bad. That's why we are still alive, so to say. That's how it works. Yeah, these are actually protecting. And so my point is, now we have the grama devatas, we have the sthala devatas, we have all these. For the same devata, we give a multiple names. So if there are 33 crore indeed, so what? That is one question. So for example, somebody says, oh well, I don't understand it. Yeah, that's a fact. You don't understand it. You don't understand how there are more of these. If you study the Sanatana literature, you may understand. I mean, not all of us within the Sanatana tradition understand it either. Fortunately, it doesn't stop us, from this. The other one, the first question you asked is the taking the literal meaning of it. I would say nothing wrong with that either. It's a starting point. For example, when my daughter is now grown up, but when she was very young, and we used to take her to, I mean, we will go and take her to local mandir here, Tirupati Mandir in where I live. We have many mandirs. And so, like very small, I'm talking like 3, 4, 2-year old or something like this. And I say, okay, what do you do? What do you do in the mandir? Suppose I ask her, she will just do with the 2 actions. She will say like this. I mean, she does this. And then they had a prasada gruha downstairs. They would have the whole nice prasad. So she will say like this. So first do this, and then dig. Start eating. This is very literal. This is how she sees the experience of going to the mandir, and is perfectly fine. But then from that, she also read the whole Amar Chitra Katha. She reads Bhagavad Gita, and she reads many other things. She reads that. So that there are different layers of it. Nothing wrong with it. Everyone has to start somewhere, and everyone is going to understand with their level of intellect. So if their understanding doesn't change or doesn't match with others, or doesn't have to match with others either, they have to improve their intellect. Okay, and this is true for the folks within Sanatana tradition, but folks outside Sanatana traditions who struggle to understand this. This is beautiful. Say everyone cannot understand quantum mechanics. It's as simple as that. And now, Parag, your turn.
No, I completely agree with you. And yes, it is important for us to rightly interpret different words. But at the same time, I'm happy that they're at least interpreting something. Right? Like Nilesh said, okay, you want to call it as crores instead of koti? Great. At least you are doing something. Yes, you are criticizing me for that, but fine, I'll handle your criticism than somebody being totally ignorant about it.
All right, Satya. So we end up on this note.
Yes. Thank you,
Just
Nilesh.
a small final note.
Yes.
The book is available. I would again encourage, I'm not trying to sell anything here, but as a reference, this is the website. INTEXP stands for Intelligent and Expert, INTEXP.net, where you will get my email address, my contact details if you have any follow-up questions. Or the book is available on Amazon and so on, or other places in India which is listed on that site. So I'll recommend, or I'll encourage that you have taken effort, spent 1 hour understanding something, take it forward, take the journey forward, and feel free to call me or reach out to me and ask questions. Many times your questions might give me different thought process, maybe something that I have never thought of. and I like that. I'll encourage that. So as your situations permit, your schedule permits, I encourage that you read the book.
All right, and I'd like to thank everyone for attending this, and I presume it will be made available as a recording somewhere too. Okay, and so that's what Raju Malhotraji says, and I like that. So everyone who showed up here, and thank you. But you imagine yourself as an actors, because this is like a movie. The real audience is out there. When you guys put it on other forums like YouTube and whatnot. So thank you for all that, Satya, and I don't know the other name. It says Indic Researchers Forum. What you guys are doing, keep up your good work, and best wishes to what you're doing. Namaskar, everyone.
Thank you,
Namaskar.
Nilesh and Paragji, for this wonderful scientific approach to understand this session. We hope that this book is going to be valuable addition to the Indic studies. The book is available for online order. You can scan the QR code mentioned here. And with this, we come to the end of the session. I once again thank Nilesh ji and Parag ji and the audience for their presence. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Namaskar.
great day.
Namaskar.